Hey YouTube, in this video we're going to talk about gym floor and how to protect it. If you build your home gym, whether in a basement or in a garage, you're going to have to find a way to protect the concrete or the wood you're going to be lifting on. Because any type of pull you do where you have to lower the bar and put it on the floor is going to damage it over time. And it takes much less weight than you might think to actually create permanent damage to your floor. So there are multiple options for that. You can use some wood, you can use some rubber mat, or you can make a combination of the two and make a platform. I will be talking about subjects like this, but for this video we're going to talk about mats only. So the first benefits of mats only is that it's going to be very cheap. Mats are most of the time very cheap and they're easy to get your hands on. But I will tell you right now that I really do not encourage you to buy them online, especially on certain websites that try to sell those puzzle pieces that you put together and put on the floor to protect it. These I've bought in the past, they're not effective, they're not thick enough, and they fall apart very easily, first off, and secondly, they fall apart as well, meaning that they're not going to stick in the puzzle permanent format that they are sold as. They're going to unstick and you're going to have to stick them together all the time. So that's not a good way to spend your money, especially because they're usually very expensive. The best mats you can buy for your home gym are store mats, horse store mats. They're the least expensive and they're the most beneficial to absorb shock because they're very thick and they're good quality. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to find a store that sells them, but it's fairly easy to find. Another good thing about these is that they're not that hard to move. If you try to carry them like you would carry a wooden plank, yes, you're going to struggle. But if you roll them and you have something to tape them together so they don't go undone, it's easy to carry on your shoulder or under your arm. I would say though that if you go and you pick them up at certain stores, give them a call so that you check. They usually store these in warehouses, and when you go to pick them up, they're flat. So you have like a pile of them. And if there's only one person, and that's you, to pick them up, you're really gonna struggle. I would advise taking someone else, even someone very weak, just so that they can stabilize the mat and you can give the horsepower to move it. That's going to save you a lot of time and trouble because you could hurt yourself lifting these. But the good thing is that once you put them down, they don't move much usually. I'm going to come back to that, but it's a good, as compared to wood, where for a platform you're going to have to put it together. With the horse mats, you can move them around too. If you need to move, if you want to rearrange your garage gym, you can just take them off of the floor and move them. As far as their effectiveness, they're incredibly effective, and I find that personally, if you buy good quality, they're not going to be bouncy. There's nothing worse than doing a deadlift session and you lower the weight and the weight bounces back at you. This is not what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to absorb the shock, not send it back. With these, I find that the shock is absorbed, it's protecting the floor, but it's not bouncy at all, it just dies. So that's good. The issues you're going to encounter with these, now that I've done the benefits, I personally feel like they're too slippery, meaning that if you want to do squats, overhead press on top of these mats, and you plant your feet, you're going to feel unstable. It feels like your foot can slip underneath you, basically. And if you have 400 pounds on your back, it's not a good feeling. It's also an issue because if you walk out your squats, when you walk backwards, the last thing you want is to slip forwards. That could be dangerous. That might be just a feeling thing, but for me, it's the difference between your foot on a mat and your foot on wood is it's day and night. And there's also the fact that if you bench on it and you go and plant your feet, depending on how you do that, when you go to push for leg drive, your foot might just slip right off because the mat is slippery. It has to do with the structure of the mat and the consistency of it, meaning that it's not completely flat. There's a grain to it. And it feels great when you walk on it, but not when your foot is flat. After that, there's another concern I have that I don't really have a proof for, but I think is pertinent. When you go for a squat, for example, on these, and you go to push back, I always felt like those mats steal sort of the kinetic energy because they're not solid. So I feel like they absorb some of that energy you're going to use to push for the positive, whereas wood is a solid structure that doesn't rob you from that. And it might be a game changer. I know that for me, I cannot squat on these things. It feels awful. I also personally need to feel like the structure underneath my feet is flat and constant. If there are creases, it just kills my momentum, I guess. Another bad thing that sort of goes hand in hand is if you live in a very humid climate, the issue with these mats is they gather humidity. So there's going to be a thin layer of water on top of them if it's raining outside or if it's very humid, especially in the morning, which makes them especially slippery. You don't have that problem with wood usually. After that, I would also say that even though they're heavy and they're sticky, they do move around. I don't have the experience of not having unscrewed mats because I personally screwed my mats to wooden planks underneath so they're more stable. But even then, they sometimes create a crease in between them, they move around. And I've heard from people who own gyms who have only mats to make the flooring that people just moving around on them is enough to move them. So they have to constantly move them back. It can be annoying. If the dust gets in between the creases, it's annoying to clean, etc., etc. That can be a hindrance. So you have to keep that in mind. And then the last part, and that has more to do with platforms, and I'll talk about it too, but it can be relevant. They don't protect 100% against shock. Meaning that for me, I have one layer of mats and one layer of wood. And I've been deadlifting at the same spot for close to 7 months. And I've noticed that the spot where I drop the deadlift is becoming a little bit more sunken. Meaning that even with the mats, the wood underneath is taking the brunt of the shock. It's still being damaged in a way. So if you only put one layer of floor of all stone mats, there could still be some damage underneath. So I would advise that if the floor underneath is very sensitive, you put two layers of mats. Or you just buy some very cheap wood, very thin, and you put the mats on top and you screw it. That would do the job. So that's pretty much it for my review of whole stone mats. I think it's the cheapest option for people who want to build a home gym. If you're not certain if you want to invest the money and time it takes to build a platform, it can also be a good placeholder because you can then reuse the same mat for the platform. So that could be a good idea. And for me, unless you are really, really good with planifying everything, putting too much money in equipment or equipment worth in a home gym at once can be a bad surprise. So it's better to start small and then expand if you don't have the expertise. So that's it for the video. Ask any question you might have in the comments, and thank you for watching.